Meditators, welcome to another episode of the Market Meditations podcast. Today we have with us Derek, CEO of PureStake, the company sitting behind both MoonRiver and MoonBeam smart contract platforms. Before founding PureStake, Derek co-founded Fuze, a cloud communication company that is now scaled to over 600 employees. Given the success of MoonRiver, I cannot wait to get his thoughts on the upcoming launch of MoonBeam and his insights into the space as a whole. Derek, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's great. Really great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
We always like to start with getting to know our guests, who they are and what their background was before crypto, especially when it's a background as interesting as yours. So Derek, please feel free to tell us what you did before crypto and how you ended up here.
Yeah, I would say that unlike a lot of other people, I don't have this kind of OG crypto story that goes back like a really long time. I'm a relatively recent entrant. So since the beginning of 2019 is really when I've been focusing all my attention on crypto. But yeah, before that, really my whole career, I've just been building software. So, in different settings, the biggest stint was at Fuze, where it was in a kind of cloud setting, but really just building, complex software platforms, a lot of work on the infrastructure, building like a technology businesses, really I've been at a series of startups. So that's kind of my background. I've been, generally speaking, the CTO or kind of one of the technical leaders, at these companies. And yeah, you mentioned Fuze. I mean, that's definitely the formative experience in my career where I spent, over 10 years there. I probably spent a good 11, 12 years there, something like this. Building a company from, there was two of us when we started to, a much more substantial size, going through multiple, rounds of VC financing. I learned like a lot. Like I call it kind of the book of many chapters, right? So, when you kind of grow a company over the course of, longer time to, I think when I left, it was probably around $150 million run rate cloud business. There's a lot of different phases to a company, I think. When you're first starting out, there's one set of challenges and one set of kind of skills you need, and then when you're a larger company, there's a different set of challenges. So I definitely feel like I learned a lot. And that's actually important. I think it's informed a lot of our strategy, like coming into the crypto space. It's notable that it feels like a lot of the founders I meet, it's their first company a lot of times, right, in the Web3 space. So I do think maybe having some of this experience is helpful in kind of having some ideas about what to do.
Derek, that is fascinating, and having that sort of background coming into crypto must be such an edge. Like we've actually had founders talk about it potentially being a disadvantage as well, in the sense that you perhaps have to unlearn some things which work previously in different sectors but don't work in crypto. But before getting into that, you mentioned a difference between stuff that works when you're a smaller company and stuff that works when you're a larger company. What are the biggest challenges? How does the game shift from the smaller stages to the larger stages?
Yeah, I think, the early stages are all around, for a tech company, around the product and finding product market fit and understanding who your customer is and, how that product is going to help them. And so I actually enjoy that part the most. So I enjoy this early stage the most, where I think it's a more creative, kind of time. I think the later stages are really more around scaling. So like, what does it mean to scale an idea once you've found that fit? That's a whole different set of challenges, right? And that, a lot of thinking has to go into, what your go-to-market is and, how you're going to get awareness for your product out to a broader market. Now, crypto is different. So don't get me wrong. There are some things that have to be unlearned, and there are, for example, the power and primacy of community is it's relevant in Web 2, but has this front, this very prime kind of front row function or importance in crypto. So there definitely are a lot of things to be unlearned as well. But I'll give you some examples. I'd say some of the things that are common. Like the importance of recruiting and hiring, that's something that I see people kind of, outsourcing that or other things. I mean, no, I spend probably a third of my time recruiting. Just hiring the right people is extremely, extremely important. And, I don't claim to have any like super unique insight there. It's just because I've made like bad mistakes in the past, right? So you learn from experience, like of what's going to work and what's not going to work. And so, and that's an example of something that you probably wouldn't, a crypto founder might think, oh, like I should spend like a third of my time recruiting, right? They're generally technical people that are hands-on and like building the product. Other things like talking to like, people don't even like the word customers in crypto sometimes, but I think it's healthy to think of it that way. Who is it that you're building this product for? And are you talking to them, and what are they, what feedback are they giving you? Sounds pretty basic, but sometimes it just doesn't happen, right? It's more of the, I'm going to build this thing, it's going to be better. People are going to understand that it's better and come. That's from my experience it can work, but it's tough. Like it's much, much better to, be talking to people, getting their feedback, and then have them along, like as you're launching, saying, hey, like, come with us, help us like refine the product, like in the early stages. That's another, and the third I would say is, around like marketing and go-to-market. This is another thing where I think a lot of the founders are very technical in crypto, and they underestimate, that you need to be kind of thoughtful about your marketing and go-to-market. You need those elements. All those elements have to come together to make a good pie, right? You need all the ingredients, to make something that's gonna work. So, I know those are just some of my thoughts. There's on how maybe someone who's coming from, having like built a company before might think about things differently.
I really think you hit the nail on the head there with all of those points. When it comes to marketing, a lot of people love their product, build a fantastic product, and just expect if you build it, they will come. No, you need to build it, and then you need to show them why they need to care about it, and then maybe they might come after seeing it for the 10th time. And what you said about spending a third of your time hiring. Now, I work and run a few companies, and I'm nowhere near as experienced as you are, Derek, and I've had the seed of that idea in my head for a little while that, hey, I should be spending a lot of my time focusing on people to hire, because it's the only way to autonomously leverage your time. If you manage to get the right people in the right place who are passionate, and it just results in exponential growth of your business that can't be matched without the right talent. So do you have any specific tips? Yeah.
I mean, I would say of all those points I mentioned, that's the most important one. Like I honestly think so, and I 100% agree with you here's the thing. I think that the trap that people fall into, especially like in the space or in technical space, is, okay, I need to find someone that already has the industry experience, that already has, the technical skills I'm looking for. I'm like the reverse. So like I actually do a lot of the screening calls, even because what I care about a lot more is some of these softer things. So that's, you mentioned passion, that's one. So passion and energy, desire to like, to be like in this, in this space, will it be a cultural fit? Basically, these are like much more important questions to me, because you can always teach someone like technical skills, or like, they'll learn if they have the right like intellect and like energy, they're going to learn the space. It's much, much harder to like teach someone those other things. I mean, I think either you kind of have, I don't want to say it's fully you have them or you don't have them, but it is like an uphill battle if someone doesn't have those kind of things, and you're trying to like get them to do those things, right? So I've really changed my thinking a lot. When I was a young person, I was like, oh, this person is expert, they know so much about the space, but they might be, an asshole or who knows what, right? So it's like, yeah, don't hire that person, basically.
Yeah, and it's especially when you're a smaller company as well. If you're, say, 5 people and you hire the let's say 4 people, and you hire the 5th person, and that person doesn't have the right culture, well, that's now like a 20% deviation on your company's culture.
It's worse. It's worse. It's worse because like everyone else sees that, and it kind of bums everyone else out, and then you can't even attract more good people. So it's like it's worse than the 20% hit. It's like a 40% hit. So that's the thing that yeah. So it's this is where and I think the other thing that I've learned is that you need to also, when things aren't working out, you need to like do something about it. I think this is another thing that I didn't when I was younger. No one wants to have unpleasant discussions, right? But it's kind of clear sometimes when it's not working, and you need to like then move to change the situation, right? And it's not, no one wants to do that, but that's another thing that I think in the past you always kind of want to say, oh, well, let's give it some more time or what have you. It's like, I've come to trust my gut. It's like you kind of, everyone, within like a short amount of time, whether it's going to work or not with someone. So, yeah.
That's such fantastic points that I hope any founder or aspiring entrepreneur listening to really takes to heart. And I myself, I know I'm going to take a lot of that to heart and focus a little bit more on hiring and really investing time into that, because it's difficult to do, because it can sometimes take such a long time before you finally find that perfect hire, and you're thinking, maybe I should be actually focusing on building the product or doing that, but that's not leverageable. That's very limited and contained. As the crypto industry continues to mature, it's natural that more and more wealth building platforms will arise. The problem with many of these, however, is that they are often so complex that it disincentivizes people from using them. This is why I've partnered with Nexo, one of the top crypto lending platforms in the world. With over 1.5 million users and 15 billion assets under management, Nexo combines the yield earning features of crypto with the familiarity and ease of centralized finance. Nexo allows you to earn interest at a competitive rate on crypto and fiat. They also allow you to take out loans using crypto as collateral so that you have access to cash without needing to sell your investment. You can even trade directly on the web platform and mobile app in an intuitive and secure way. If you're looking to embark on the journey to financial freedom whilst minimizing time and frustration, I highly recommend you check them out by visiting nexo.io. That's nexo.io. So Derek, you had this incredible entrepreneurial journey and then eventually came into crypto. Can you tell us what PureStake is and what you're trying to build?
Yeah, so PureStake, we're a company that's a technology company really focused on creating software, and it's really, I would call it infrastructure as our focus, right? So blockchain and Web3 infrastructure. But, at this point, really like almost all of our energy is being spent on MoonBeam and MoonRiver, right? That's really the primary focus. And but I do see those projects as this kind of important Web3 infrastructure, right? That's going to be able to power, what I see as, future Web3 applications, particularly these multi-chain, applications that I envision becoming quite prevalent in the future. So yeah, that's kind of the company. And I would say there is definitely an infrastructure component. We do have a DevOps kind of capability, but it's largely kind of software and DevOps is really our focus.
So as a regular crypto community member, why should I care about MoonBeam and MoonRiver right now?
Yeah, so I think the idea for the project really was, it centers around this idea that the premise is that we're moving into we already are in a permanently multi-chain environment. And that I think we're still at the start of this kind of shift where almost everything that's been created to date was created with this kind of single chain deployment in mind, right? So you kind of had, largely Ethereum mainnet, right? So like I have an idea for a dApp or protocol, I'm going to deploy it onto Ethereum mainnet. And I think that we're just at the start now of what's I think is going to play out over the next several years of kind of reimagining what these like protocols and applications will look like in a multi-chain, in a natively multi-chain environment. And so you see kind of the first phase now is that, a lot of people are taking these apps that were deployed onto Ethereum mainnet and then they're deploying them to like other chains, right? So you kind of always have this porting thing happening where, okay, like I was on ETH mainnet, I'm going to deploy to, like Avalanche, to, Polygon, to BSC, to other, or maybe an L2, like Optimism or Arbitrum. But it's the same protocol that's being deployed in all these places. I think that's kind of the step one or phase one, but it doesn't really leverage, any kind of specialized functionality from these different chains. And there's other problems too, right? A lot of the, take Sushi is one of our partners, right? They have their AMM deployed on all these chains, but the liquidity is all split on like all these different chains. And so, I think the reimagination there is, okay, what does it mean if I want to go perform an action like locally on some chain, but leverage liquidity that might be like on another chain? That would make a lot of sense versus having, these like isolated like islands basically like all over the place. So that idea is kind of the core kind of premise and idea. And then the question, we want to really position MoonBeam as being a platform that, can natively support these kinds of multi-chain applications. So that's what led us to Polkadot in the first place. It has this native capability of for cross-chain like communications. So we're leveraging that, and these features are actually just going to be shipping shortly. Like we haven't even shipped them. We've been mostly working on the Ethereum compatibility features, which we can talk about. But we're also kind of forming partnerships with other folks that will allow for rich connectivity to chains that aren't Polkadot like chains, and particularly use cases beyond this like asset transfer scenario. So that we want to provide this kind of like this like great place where people can build these natively multi-chain applications.
So I find with these very specific examples help really demonstrate the potential. And you mentioned the sushi example. So for example, by partnering MoonBeam and sushi, you guys can potentially make sushi have access to liquidity pools from any chain.
So that would require changes on their protocol, but yes, that is like a discussion that we've had, and I think that's kind of a further evolution of their existing protocols. I would say that the immediate needs are more practical and more basic that they have, which is, in their strategy, they're saying, okay, there's all these chains, and we just want to be on these chains because that's how we can acquire more users and get access to more assets and increase our aggregate TVL across all chains. And it's quite a practical discussion. I mean, Maki's not there anymore, but when we originally had these discussions with Maki, he had some interesting points where he said, at first we were quite hesitant to like go multi-chain because we said, what we might do is we might have a deployment on another chain. It's the same users we have on ETH mainnet will basically bridge and move like over to this other chain. And okay, then it's kind of a net zero gain, but we've just splintered our liquidity across two chains. So like, should we do that? What he said is that like 100%, like when they started moving multi-chain, it was aggregative. It was like accretive basically. So there was like new users and new assets were being serviced as they were moving to different chains. It was not the same. It was not, or at least not predominantly the same users. And so that's when they said, okay, well now we need to aggressively like start going multi-chain so we can kind of scoop up like as many of these users as we can. So I think it's a sound strategy, and obviously I think that's a way that they can differentiate against Uniswap then, right? Who has a much more, hey, we're on Ethereum, and yes, we're going to Optimism, but this is kind of our home, and everything else is a bit of a foreign land kind of thing. So that makes sense. But I'll give you another example to make it concrete on maybe the kind of more advanced thing I'm talking about. So.
Sorry, before you jump into that other example, I just had a quick question about the previous one, and I wanted to give the next one my full attention and not be remembering this question.
Yeah.
So I can see it giving sushi, for example, more users, but would it raise any sort of absurd, like heavy costs or difficulty in the actual application? So, for example, would accessing certain liquidity pools end up costing a lot of money and not actually practically help with just having more overall liquidity?
In like a multi-chain deployment, you mean, or?
Yes. In a multi-chain deployment?
I think the different chains all have different like performance characteristics, different like communities around them. So the protocol is the same, like the AMM is the functionality is the same, but obviously the performance and how it kind of operates is different in the different environments, and like what assets are available are kind of different. So it's a mix, right? I think though, looking forward for them, this idea of how it is that they connect these different like deployments like is kind of a key thing. They've done that even locally, right? With their 𝐏𝐨𝐝𝐬𝐬 like product, like is attempting to connect like some of the different services that like are on like one platform. But then there's this kind of larger question. Okay, well, how do I connect the full platform instances like across these different chains together? I think that's the next wave that we're going to see as DeFi protocols start to think about that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Please do dive into your second concrete example.
Sure. So, we're supporting the team at Lido. For those not familiar, Lido is probably the largest liquid staking derivatives protocol. So right now on Ethereum, you can deposit into the Lido protocol to get out like a liquid staked version of staked ETH. So it's ST-ETH. And they're also looking to move multi-chain. So they've gone, I think, to Solana. They have a deployment now, and they want to create a same product on Polkadot. And so here's like how it's going to work, right? Basically, they are deploying a dApp that has like the main logic of the application on MoonBeam because they're used to the Ethereum tech stack. They already have a lot of these components, so that's kind of where the app will live. But DOT and the staking functionality, that they're trying to work with live on a different chain. It lives on, it's a very specialized functionality. It lives on the Polkadot relay chain, and so we basically have created integration hooks, like basically precompiles that are in the EVM on MoonBeam that allow them to kind of remote control staking functionality on the relay chain from the dApp that's on MoonBeam. And so it's kind of simple to describe, but there's something kind of pretty special happening here, right? Where you have basically two different chains, each specialized to like a different set of functions. You have this like ability to natively do this kind of remote like invocation or this remote control kind of operation, and so then they have functionality that's spanning two specialized chains, but it's kind of one app to the user basically. And so I think this is a pretty simple example, but that's like the direction in which I'm most excited. I think things are going to move, because if you can kind of combine different specialized functionality from different chains, but have it be like one application, then you kind of achieve scalability. You achieve like the ability to use these specialized like different functions. That's like something that is, I think, we'll uniquely be able to support, and the Polkadot architecture uniquely supports as well.
Something we've had said on this podcast a few times that's really stuck with me is that the moment the Web3 starts really hitting mainstream, one of the most important things is going to be using it without even realizing you're using it. So if we have this one central location that uniquely uses every single chain for what is most beneficial, what that chain is more suited for, then we really are heading in that direction where people are using whatever chain that's best for them without even realizing they're using that chain.
It's a very important point. And I would say that this is something that is underappreciated right now, which is basically, it has to do with the end user UX. So right now, for most Web3 apps, it's a little bit in your face, right? So like the user has this like, or is required to have this full awareness of all the chains they're interacting with, right? So because you're like approving things and like, in MetaMask, right? For these functions to happen. I think that's actually going to be a challenge in getting better adoption, because you can't, one, two, if you have like 10 different chains, it's like having 10 different databases, and the end user is forced to know about those 10 and start approving like actions in all 10. That's not how like, modern apps work. They hide a lot of the complexity like away from the user. Now, I think in Web3, that's been like not something people want to do, because, it's in the past, it's meant like, oh, I need to have these centralized components, right? Where I'm custodial then, or I'm kind of like doing things on behalf of the user. But, in this native multi-chain idea, you can hide things away, right? So like in the case of Lido, people don't have to know about the staking functionality in the relay chain. They're kind of like abstracting or hiding that away, but it's still Web3 native, and it's still non-custodial, and it's still like an actual Web3 app. So I do think that's, think about it, like there might be an identity service, or might be, other kinds of services behind the scenes. You need to like be able to hide that from the user if you want to create like better user experiences. And I'm a big believer that this is one of those things when you come from Web 2 to Web 3. I mean, the amount of time being thought that goes into thinking about UX is like vastly smaller. I mean, I drop people's jaws when I say, at Fuze, I had a 200 person like engineering and product team, and maybe like a third were devoted to like UX issues, kind of either design, doing user research, like UX experts. If you're building like a Web 2 web app, you're spending a lot of time on that, and like the Apples and Googles of the world are really good at this. And it's like, in Web 3, you're lucky if there's like one designer, maybe. Like, on these teams, they're all like cryptographers and all these heavy duty like math people. So I think I'm a big believer that this is a key unlock, like, as chains kind of move to this native multi-chain model.
Well, as the space is blowing up, incredible talent from all over the place is coming in, especially the talent that wasn't the foundation of crypto, the people who are more UI, UX minded, especially because we're so finance focused. Like DeFi is such a big and booming, exciting industry right now in the space that who's gonna get their mortgage through MetaMask? Do you really expect the majority of people to get a MetaMask and interact with the protocol in that way to try get their mortgage? Like, no one's going to feel safe doing that. No one's going to feel comfortable doing that. It really is essential for the future. And it's exciting just thinking about it with what you guys are building. It sounds like it could be a pivotal part of that future. And based on what you are building, it sounds like you believe in a multi-chain future. I think with what we've seen happen recently is NFTs have hit mainstream, and they've just become unusable for the average person on Ethereum, for example, and projects are blowing up all over the place. Most people have accepted that multi-chain is likely going to be the future. Do you think there are any arguments against this? Because I know you agree from MoonBeam, but would you be able to argue the other side, that maybe Ethereum will be the only one?
So I think Ethereum will be like one of the only ones, but not in the way that most like maxis think. And the thing that has like the sticking power is the Ethereum tech stack more than like the Ethereum network, in my opinion. And so this has obviously informed our product idea, because we very intentionally said, look, let's make an environment that is compatible with all of the Ethereum dev tooling, and other like infrastructural like technologies. And if you look, actually, I think a majority of the chains in this new multi-chain environment that have gotten traction have done that, right? So that applies to, Avalanche, C-Chain, like, BSC, Polygon, and so on. And, the reason is, so those are all different chains, but you still, by being able to leverage all these tools, you still get the familiarity and you get the compatibility with with that technology stack. So I do think, and don't get me wrong, I think ETH mainnet is not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, it is like the largest concentration of value, but I see that it's the technology stack that is like probably the more sticky thing. I don't see a future where that technology stack is not like one of the main options. And there may be a few others, but that's where I think there are going to be many chains, but the tech stacks, like the kind of the development, like frameworks, those are going to be fewer number, because there's only so many you can have where you can get like reasonable amount of traction. So that's the Ethereum one. I think that's Substrate, like the technology framework we've used to actually build MoonBeam. That's the Cosmos SDK, is another one. At this point, I think it's likely that the Solana, tech stack will be like here to stay. So there's a much smaller handful of tech stacks, but I think there's going to be many chains, using those tech stacks.
That's a really well thought out answer. Thank you, Derek. There's one final topic I wanted to cover on this podcast, and that is to do with the Parachain Auctions. Could you tell us a little bit about what they are, and then explain how you guys, in the most recent one, I believe, raised $1.36 billion, but the second place raised $1.3 billion, but still managed to win?
Yeah. So this is happening right now. There's basically a launch sequence. We're in the launch sequence on Polkadot to launch the MoonBeam Parachain. It is kind of this market-driven mechanism where different parachain teams vie then for occupying one of these slots. So we narrowly lost, even though we had more total contributions, to a great team, 𝐏𝐸𝐬𝐬, like that we know well and that we will be integrating with once we're up and running on the Polkadot like mainnet. But yeah, I mean, the numbers and the amount of support are quite like, we've been kind of staggered a little bit. I mean, it's $1.4 billion worth of DOT has gone in. I think we had contributions from somewhere close to 200,000 people. I mean, these are, even by crypto standards, these are big numbers, right? You get kind of used to big numbers in crypto, but okay, then there's crypto big numbers where it's like, okay, yeah, these are crypto big numbers. So, so that's like really cool. And yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people saw what was done on MoonRiver, our initial deployment on Kusama. For those that aren't aware, this is kind of a companion network to Polkadot, and this is where things kind of happen first. And we've been up and running on Kusama with our MoonRiver network for about 3 months now, and a lot has happened. I mean, there's like, a ton of projects have deployed, a lot of assets being created, NFT projects are deploying, Sushi and these other multi-chain folks I was talking about before are deploying. So there's a lot of activity there, and I think that's, it kind of provides a little bit of a roadmap of what's going to happen on MoonBeam. All the same things are going to happen on MoonBeam.
Derek, on a personal level, I wanted to ask, what is it like to, I think Fuze I have it here, 2017 was reported with a value of $1.4 billion. And now, in a matter of a year, MoonBeam has, not even a year, in these auctions, it's managed to raise $1.3 billion in the shortest period of time. Is there any sort of feeling you have towards that? How long it takes in any other industry and how it happens in crypto?
I mean, I still talk to some people from my old colleagues, and they don't understand what's going on, basically. Because yeah, I mean, for the longest time, you work for 10 years on something, and if you're lucky, you get to a $1 billion valuation. So I mean, I won't say that we aren't lucky as well, but it just speaks to the degree of opportunity that exists right now in crypto is just immense. And I think people are waking up to this. In the recruitment stuff we talked about before, the kinds of people I'm speaking with that want to get into the Web3 and crypto space, these are very high caliber people at this point. So that makes me extremely bullish, but it's obviously also driven by this huge opportunity that there's this shift that's happening, this whole shift that's happening towards Web3, and people understand that at this point, and they want to be part of that change.
So you don't think any part of it right now is a domino effect of hype, but rather a fair valuation because of how significant it is for the future?
When it comes to like valuations of crypto projects, I don't know that I claim to be expert in this. I mean, the market speaks, and you have to listen. As for, I mean, yeah, not to get too philosophical, but I do think that in crypto, the lesson for everyone, even in the broader space, to learn is that it goes back to this community thing we were talking about at the beginning. That it is in some ways, I think, less about fundamentals and more about like collective belief. And this upsets people, right? In the traditional space, you have people who spent their whole career, analyzing, regular like equity value, like in businesses with these complex models, bottom up, like whatever. But so I think this is crypto is almost an affront to these people, right? Where they're like, oh, it's worth something because people think it's worth something. But I think even in regular equity markets, there's a bit of there, that's like an important element too. Like things are worth something because people think they're worth something. So yeah, I think that that's probably the answer is somewhere in between, right? That you kind of have what something's worth something because people think it's worth something, and there are some fundamentals there too.
And just to highlight the point you made about the equities market and crypto, it really all is just the exact same thing. Random stuff we assign value to, and it's worth what people say it's worth, regardless of what it is. Derek, this has been a terrific episode. I have had so much fun. I hope you've enjoyed yourself as well. Audience, I hope we didn't get too technical, but there's so much to take away from this episode, whether you're an entrepreneur, a crypto investor, or trader, so much to learn from. Derek, do you have any final words for our audience before we finish off this episode?
We definitely would welcome anyone who's interested in kind of learning more about MoonBeam to join our community. We have like a quite active and welcoming community. So I would just invite people to join our Telegram, join our Discord. There's a lot of friendly people there. I think that's the reputation that we have.
I'm sure people will be able to find you. We'll have links in the description below to all of their platforms. Meditators, we'll see you next time.